All right, so greetings to you all. Today mark our 5th week class. So the last time we were trying to design this interface. This is a list of tasks. This is an application that displays a list of tasks, and we were able to design all the elements for this one. And I gave you guys an assignment to complete. So the first one is the color, how to set color in for your views, how to set color for your views. So to set color for your view, especially for this test, because this is the assignment I gave you to change the text color of this test to something that looks like this. Okay, so to set that color, you come here and then you use the property called text color, that's TC. So when you apply that color, you can use your hexadecimal color code or those that you define in your resources. So for now, in our resources, if you check the resource value, we have colors of black and white, which is colors created by default. Like as you create the project, these are the colors that comes with the project by default. You can add your colors over here. So to specify your colors, you will just use the open and close anchor tag, open and close anchor tag, and then type color. Then you specify the name of your color. So let's say we want to use color red. So you just type color red, and then you close the tag here, and then pass your hexadecimal color to this into in between this the tags. So let me just, I don't know the actual color for red, so I'll just enter a value. Then you see after I enter that value, a small square box appears here. So this is like a color swatch. So you can click on it and it shows this color palette. So you have two options. The first option is the color resources within your project. So it's showing the black and white and the new one that I just created. So if you are creating an application, usually the application starts from the designer, where UI UX designer will specify the colors and all that specification for the applications. So you already have those colors, so you will define them inside this file. Then you come here to select. Otherwise, you can come here and then pick from this color palette. So for now, I want red, so I'll just come here and choose any random color that looks like red. So now I have a new color resource called resource value called red. So inside your main activity here, the text color, I can just come and then use at color because it's a color resource. We have layout resource, drawable resource, and other stuff. But this is for colors. So you use at colors. If it's drawable, you use at drawable. If it's layout, it's at layout. So this one at color, then slash at color, then slash the color values names. So here we want say red. Okay. So as I chose the red, you can see that the text color is showing over here. I think it's hiding behind the view. So the color is red. It's hiding, the text view is hiding behind this one. So I'm setting it as so the text view is hiding behind the list. So you can use a property to hide a view, and that property is called visibility. So if you set the visibility to either gone, we have gone, and then we have visible, and then we have invisible. So invisible means that the layout will be there, but it will not be visible. But the frame, as in the space it takes, it will still assume that space. But when you use the con, that one, the whole thing will disappear from the view. It will no longer occupy that space anymore. Okay, so I just use this to hide it so that we can see the text. Okay, so I'll bring it back now. So our text is red. Okay, so we are done with assignment one. So for the purple color at the top here, this purple color is actually a toolbar. So when you check when you check mobile applications on your phone, you see that they have a bar at the top there where they put either the application name or some options or buttons at the top here. This is the toolbar. Those bars that shows up there are called toolbar. And this toolbar usually is used to display the current location that the user is in the application, or to show menus. So for WhatsApp, you see some camera menu at the top here, icon at the top here that the user can click to take a picture, and it shows WhatsApp as a title at the top here. And sometimes when you navigate through the app, it tells you your current location in the app. And sometimes it shows a three vertical dots here that when you click on, it pop ups more items for you to select from. So this is the toolbar. And to implement the toolbar in our activity, it's also a view, just like all the other views that we look at. That's the test view, etc. It's also a view. So you can just specify it like this. You bring your anchor tag, then toolbar. Sorry, so I was actually typing inside the comment. Okay, so I'll come outside the comment and then tap my anchor tag, and then I have toolbar. So you select the second one, this one called Android X.compat. Okay, so you select that one and then you give it math parent. You set your compulsory property, and I'll give this one wrap content for now. Okay, so to make this thing accessible, to make this view accessible outside of the XML. Like I said, the XML is for designing your UI, but before these views or UI become visible in your application, it needs to be inflected. So the Kotlin does those jobs. It is responsible for inflating these views so that they can become visible in the application. So you need an ID in order for Kotlin to be able to access this view. So you declare an ID. You just type an ID. It's also a property. And then you use the at plus ID. So at add ID. The plus stands for add ID. But when you are using it, you don't use the plus anymore. Like when you are referring to it, you don't use the plus. But when you are declaring an ID for a view, you use the plus at plus ID. Then the name of the ID. So I'll call it toolbar. In this case, toolbar. Okay. So right now, you can see some square button at the top here. At the top here, we have to specify other things like color for it. So I think background color. So we can specify the background color. So we can specify the background color and then other theme properties. So let me copy some here from my old project and paste here to move us faster. Okay. So I'll just paste it here. Okay. So we have this. You can see that it's still hiding behind this one. It is because we are using match parent for the recycler view. So it has occupied the entire thing. So we have to readjust it. Okay, so for now, let me constrain this one to the end of the parent, and then this one to the end of the parent, and then the top to the end of the parent. Okay, you can remove this one. This is not part. So I'll constrain top to top of parent. Okay, so now we have to constrain the recycler view under the toolbar, not to the parent. So we constrain the top to the top of parent. We have to do it constrain top to the bottom of the toolbar. Okay. So like I said, if you are referring to an ID, you don't use the plus. So here you see we used at ID and then the name of the ID. But when we were declaring it, it is at plus ID and then the name we want to give to it. Okay. So here the match parent, let's change it to match constraint. So the match constraint will only extend the thing to a certain level that allows or gives room for other view to be visible. Okay, so when you do this, you can see that we now have something close to our design model. Okay, but you can see that our design model fits close to the screen. But if you see this, there's a space around this. So we have to adjust it so that it fits tight to the phone edges. So to do that, it is the space there is caused by this padding. So let me remove the padding. I'll control C to copy it, and then you can see that the whole thing has now fit the entire screen. Nice one. Okay, but you can see that the views are now close to the edges of the phone. If I should zoom the phone for you, you see that the items are close to the edge of the phone. But this is not the same thing we have here. So I have to give the padding to the recycler view instead, so that the padding will affect the list, not the actual container holding the toolbar and the recycler view. So to do that, I already copied. So I'll come here and then Control V to paste, or Command V to paste it here. Okay, so once I've done that, you can see that it is a bit away from the edges. Let me show the difference. When I remove it, you see it comes close to the edge. When I do this, it moves away from the edges. But yeah. So we are good to go. So now we are done with our assignments on the top toolbar, and then changing of colors. So you can use this small palette to get your colors. Okay, so let's go to the agenda for today. So today we want to define some data class, and then provide some temporary data, and then enable view binding, create adapter class, rename our main activity to list activity, because we realize that that activity is showing list of items. So we want to rename the class to match what it actually does. And then finally, we will connect the view to the data. So let's get started. Okay. So the first thing I'll do is to create the data class. So when all these tags we are creating, it is data we are coming to receive from the user. And usually the data will be in a certain form. Like the data that will capture from the user will have a title, will have the date it was created, comment, and then a status, whether the task was completed or is still pending. We can group this thing into a structure instead of making it normal regular variables like variable for title, created at, comments, and all those things. You can group it together so that if there's any action, further action or operations you want to perform on the data, it will all be in or it will all be at one place. So to do that, we create a class. That's why we'll create this data class. But this is not just a class, it's a data class. It's a special kind of class that comes with some extra helper functions. So as when the needs come and we begin to use them, I'll touch on it further. By example of those function is copy and to string. So the to string allows you to be able to print the string form of your data, and it's good for debugging purposes. So to create a class, you come to this folder. So like I said, this Kotlin Java folder, under it we have three folders that look packages. You remember we talk about packages. So we have three packages. The first one, you come to the first one and then you right click on it. When you right click, you come to new. And then new, you select Kotlin class and file. So when you click on that, the list that shows there's an option called data class. So you select the data class. Then you give the name for the class. In this case, we want to call it to do item. So then you click on enter. So this creates a class for you. So inside this class, we want to create all the data we want to capture from the user, which is the title, the created ad, comments, and status. So I'll copy those and paste there in order for us to move faster. Okay. Okay. So I just copied and pasted the properties I made mention of, which is the title, created at, comment, and then status. The ID is for identity. Since the items are a lot, how do you differentiate one item from the other? You need an ID so that you'll be able to specifically identify that, okay, this is one tax, this is this particular tax. So we need an ID. Okay. So I just use a Kotlin helper class called random that is used to generate random IDs. Like it generates random numbers. So anytime you create a class, I'll by default generate a random integer and then assign it to this variable. You don't have to provide the user does not have to provide that by himself, he or herself, but I'll generate it automatically. The reason being that when you do it like this, it is easy to handle in terms of programming. If you allow the user to determine his or her ID, there will not be any form of consistent. The user might forget to do it, and your data will be there without any proper way for you to identify the data. So you for the ID, you usually auto generate it. Okay. And the dates, I'm doing the same for the dates. Because anytime the user creates an item, I automatically create a timestamp, the current date and time for the user. It doesn't need to go and pick a date. There's no need. Okay. So these are the properties we want. So now I put all the properties together in a class. Okay. So the next thing we have to do is to provide sample data. But I think I'll touch on that one later. We I'll enable another feature. Let's go to our configuration to enable view binding. Then I'll enable another feature for the data class, because the assignment I'll be giving you, you have to design this page. This is detail page, and this detail page you have to pass data from the list screen to this particular screen, the detail screen. If so the feature I'm about to enable will help you to easily pass the data through these two screens. Okay, so let's go to our configuration. When you come to the down here, let me close the whole thing again. So when I close up this whole thing, we have the app, and then we have the Gradle under your Android. When you come to under your Android, we have the app, and then we have the Gradle script. So we've been working in the under the app. Now come to the Gradle script, and there are the first two things. The first one is build.gradle.kt. That's a file for configuring the entire project. But your project can have different modules. Your application can have different modules. Like, for example, you can have a free version model, you can have paid version model, you can have like premium users model. You can have different model of your application. So for now, we are having just one model. So you click on the module here, the one with the app, module column app. You select that one. So the first one is for global configuration for the entire application, but the second one is specific to this module. So you come into this module. Inside this module, we have the application name. Like I told you before, it's used for identity when you send the application to Play Store. And then your compile version. So I told you when we were creating the application that you select your APK version and all that. So this is the APK version you are compiling against. And then we have, when you come here, is also talk about the application ID. So this is actually the application ID. And then the minimum SDK. We have like upper SDK and then the minimum SDK. That is the upper and the lower limit for the SDK. And then we have the target SDK. Usually the target will be like equal to the compile SDK. Then we have the version code. So this version code are used for tracking the different versions of your application that you submit to the Play Store. So anytime you submit application to Play Store, you have to update this value. Your latest update to the Play Store is a version code cannot be less than the previous one, cannot be less than or equal to the previous one. It always has to be higher. So anytime you are submitting application to Play Store, you have to update this value. That's why some applications you see that they have the version number. You can change it to whatever you want. You see some people have it like this, 1.0.3 or 1.0 something. Some have 1.0.8 slash beta. They have like beta. This one you can name it however you want. It's your way of identifying your application version. But this one always takes an integer and it has to be increasing anytime you submit application. So we have the build type. So for the build type, you can have a build, like when you build this application for release or to go and run on devices, you can have for, so this is for release. Release means that you are submitting it to Play Store for people to use. You can have some for debug and all those stuff. So these are the configurations for when you are submitting for them Play Store. So when you're about to submit your application for Play Store, you can do all configurations that you want to do inside this block. Okay, so the other two here are for Kotlin and the Java configuration. Earlier, I told you that Kotlin relies on Java virtual machine for uh, compiling the Kotlin code. Okay, so what we are coming to do is quite simple. It's just to enable a feature that allows you to easily pass data between one activity to the other. So to implement that, you come to the top here and type ID, and then you open close bracket, and then you pass the value as a string, and it's called Kotlin in small letters, Kotlin hyphen parse. I think it's it, parse. Okay, so it's Kotlin hyphen parcelize. So like this word parcel. So parcel uses it to parcel the data and push it from one screen to the other. So we want to parcel data. So anytime you want to parcel your data, package your data and send to something, you come here and type this thing. And this thing enables that feature. The feature is already there, but it is not readily available. You just have to come and type this thing, then it becomes available. Sure. So I'll put a comment here. Enable. Oh, sorry. I clear the closing bracket. That's why we have some error there. Okay. So this for passing the data, and I'll use it inside this data class. So let's finish with the view binding. So to enable the view binding, you come below this Kotlin option. Inside of it, below this Kotlin option, pay attention. Below this Kotlin option, I want to enable view binding. To do that, you type build, build features, and then you open and close curly bracket. So there's difference. Here I use brackets, and here I'm using curly bracket. Then inside the curly bracket, you type view binding, and then you set it to true. So this one enables view binding. So you ask me, what's view binding? So the view binding is also a feature that we are enabling. It allows you to convert all your XML to Kotlin code. So the view binding converts, this feature allows your program to convert all the XML, all this XML code. It will convert it to Kotlin code. It will generate a class for each XML file. It will generate a class for each XML file. And then the view inside of that class will become properties. The views inside that class will become properties. Okay. So when you are done enabling this view and then the parseling, you see as we started typing, then this bar popped up. So anytime you make a change over here, you have to rebuild or reconfigure your project. So here we call it syncing. So at the top here, you can just click on sync to enable it. Or when you come to the top here, you see some elephant icon here. So you also say It also reads sync project with Gradle file. So when it either click here or when it doesn't show, you can just click at the button icon here, and then project will sync. Sometimes it has to download some of the resources. Okay, so the Gradle is building. So once it is done, these two features will become available in your code. So whilst it's building, let me continue with the code so that if the feature becomes available, then we can import it. So so after we've enabled this, we have to come and put a mark on this class, this data class, that this class is marked with a label that it can. So we want to parcel this data from one screen to another. We have to put a label on it. You know, if you post something or send a package to someone without a label, they don't know who or where to deliver the package to. So to achieve that in programming or in Android, you use something we call annotation. So you come to the top here above the data class before the data keyword, and then you type at pass slice. Okay, so it's here at pass slice, and then after the brackets, you bring a column and inherit from another class called passlabo. So with these two things placed at the top and the bottom here, your class is now marked with an address. Let me say an address with a label that it is transferable. So you can transfer it because it has a unique address that can be traced. Right. So our Gradle is done. So once it was done, we were able to import these two properties without we enabling this feature. When you try to implement these two things, that's attach address to this package or this data, it will not work. That's why we have to enable this. You can try it out. You can comment this one out and then build it again and then see. You have an error there. Take the time to practice and see and give me your feedback either in the next class or in the comment section. I'm following. Okay, so now we are done with the data class, right? So the view binding, let's see the view binding. So now we've enabled the view binding. Let's come to how to create the adapter class. So you ask, what's an adapter class? It's like we are creating class. I've been talking about class. So in fact, Android is based around object-oriented programming. So you should take some time to read about that topic, object-oriented programming. Most of the things are classes that you be extending, implementing, etc. So we have to create another class called to do adapter. So this adapter class is responsible for getting the data, this data that we created. It will get the data from this guy and then connect it to this item. Connect it to this item so that the main activity can show it as a list. Let me take it again. This to do adapter class will be responsible for fetching the data or getting the data from this guy and prepare it. Or sometimes the data might be in unstructured format. You have to prepare it in a way that will be pleasing or usable to the user. So over here, you see that we are applying colors to this text here, we apply color. This date has a format. We have different type of date formats, blah blah blah. We have all certain type of style. You can apply different style or append something to the data coming. You can change, you can style this data in a certain way. You can't do it directly from this data class. It will make it too complicated and it will violate a lot of principles in programming. We don't do that. So the to do adapter class will be responsible for getting the data, preparing it in a format that will fit this view here, what we want to see here. So that's the responsibility. So get the data from here and then format it and then push it into this view, and then this guy will show the data as a list. Okay, so to create the adapter class, we'll come back to our app folder. Inside the app folder, we'll enter the Kotlin Java folder and then back to where we created this to do item class. So you right click on the folder, you right click, look for new, and new is at the top, and then another dialog pops up. And the first one is Java class. Choose the second one, Kotlin class and file. Then over there you type your to do adapter class. Oh, so this one too, I'll copy the code and paste. One interesting thing about this adapter class is that it is always the same. Adapter class is always the same. It's just some few things that you have to change. So you can copy this adapter class and paste in on your GitHub repo. Just create a repository on GitHub for it. So that anytime you need it, you just come and copy it and then you use. So this red things means that I have to import these libraries. Okay, or the classes, either libraries or class. So I'm importing them. And then I'll explain the code. Then we'll go on with our programming. So I've imported all the necessary classes, but we are still getting some error. So these are the parts I will be explaining. Okay, so this is our to-do class that we created. This is just a class, but this class extend another class called, let me minimize this for now. This class extend an inbuilt class called list adapter. So list adapter, like I said, this to do class will take the data and then take the data, push it into this item underscore to do layout. Once it fits it with the data and format it properly, it will call this recycler view to display the whole thing as a list. Okay, so here it takes the data and then you create another class inside of it. That class, I name it to do view holder. So this is the class called to do view holder. Inside this class, that's why there's the inner keyword over here. So inside this class, this is where you actually connect the data to. So here you define the way to connect the data to the views. But before we do that, let me talk about the view binding that we enable. I told you that the view binding will create a class out of the XML file we've created. So where is that class right now? So anytime you enable this view binding, it goes to create a class with the same name as this item, but it starts with a capital letter. So instead of item underscore to do, you have capital letter item and then capital letter to do. And then it will append another word called binding to it. So this is the difference between the ordinary class and the ones generated from enabling the feature of view binding. So it creates a class with the same name as the XML file, but it appends binding to it. And the starting letters are capital letters. So if you see here, you can see an item called a class called item to do binding. So this is actually this this XML layout. So we are importing it. These are automatically generated for us because we enable the view binding. So now I've created the instance of that class and I name it binding. Okay. And then inside the inner class, I've declared another function. I've defined another function that takes the to do item. It takes the data. And then this is just a context. Don't worry about this for now. And then from this binding, I told you the views in the XML, the views as in this test views and things will become properties in the class. So once I create an instance of this class, I can access the views now using the binding variable. So when you type binding dots, then the name. Okay, so the names are not, the properties are not coming because I've forgotten to set ID. Like I said earlier, to access these views inside your Kotlin, you have to attach an ID to it so that Kotlin can go through this. Because there are a lot of views here. How does Kotlin decide or how does it know whether to set the data from this guy, whether to set the comments to this test or to put the comments here? It will not know. Everything is just raw without any identity, without any name. So you have to set an ID for this view so that they can be easily referred to or accessed from the Kotlin. So to do that, I'll fast forward this. So now I've provided ID for all of the views in it. So now if we go back to the adapter class, and you can see some of the error is going because I have some of them declared already. So inside the view, if you tap binding dot, then all the properties will come. Let me try it for you. So binding dot, then all the properties we declared, you can see the title, the ID, the title. And if you look at it carefully on the right side here, it shows that it's a test view. So if you go to the XML, this one is referring to this one, the title is a test view. And if you check the comments, so let's look at some of them. So you see, we have title, which is a test view, created a test view, status, test view, comment, test view. So all these views have become a property. So now I can access them. And then you see the properties we are setting here, the test property we are setting here. Once you have access to these views in your adapter class, you can set all the properties you are setting here. Okay. So if we go to the adapter class, I'm setting the text to the data the, the data item, which is to do item. So I create an instance of it, and then it also has a title. So I'm capturing this title and then assigning it to this title. Okay, so I'm assigning it to this title. That's what I'm doing here. So title pass to data title pass to view title. Data comment pass to view comment. And then here we have the created art. So created art, I'm doing some magic over here. Like I said before, you in the adapter class, sometimes we format or prepare the data in a way that we want or is user friendly. Okay, so here I want the date in this format. I want the date in this format. So the data that is coming is actually a date, a timestamp. That's a date and a time, something like this from here to here. Is a date like this. But you can see I have a label saying created at. So to prepare this long thing all at once, I have to do some magic here. And the magic I'm doing is that I first imported a library and I said, and I passed a parameter to this class. When I import this date class, I have to pass a parameter to it. And this parameter is the format or the way I want my time stamp to show. And this, I'm saying I want the date, the month, the year, and then the hour, the minute, as you can see here. Okay. So you also pass this local dot default to it. So this one makes sure that it uses the device current location. So it will set the date and time based on your current location. Okay, so I pass these properties directly when I'm creating an instance of this class. So I create this instance of the class and I created another function called format date. So this one will format the date to what I want. So I'll get a date. When I get the date, I'll pass it to a format function on this instance object. On this object, it has a method called format that you have to pass the date to it. So this function takes, so this is a single expression function. So the function has just one body. So since it has one body, I've converted it into this format. I don't know if you guys understand. You should ask questions so that we can talk more about it. Okay, but this is a single line function. You can see the keyword fun. So this function is just taking the date and then formatting it into this style. Okay, so here I'm taking the date, so you can see I created a variable. So I created a variable, I passes, and I created this function. So I'm calling this function format date, and I'm passing the date I'm getting from the data date, which is created at. Yeah, this created at. I'm getting this date, and I'm passing it to this function so that it will use this class to format it for me. Okay, and also, sorry, also I want to append this label before it. So to append this label before it, I have to create a string resource. So for now, that string resource is not available. That's why I'm getting this red color here. So when you hover over it, it is telling you that it can't find unresolved reference to created art. So the IDE suggests to you that you can click here to create that resource. So I'll just click on it in order for me to create it. Okay. So to create that string resource, I'll then you pass the value. So I said created at, and then column. So and then I'll pass an argument to it. So I'll pass an argument of percentage one and then dollar sign the string, and I'll click OK, and our error will be gone. So let's go to this resource folder, the resource folder, and then click on value folder, and then we'll see another resource called under the color. There's another resource called string. So this string resource hold all the texts that you'll be displaying in your application. It holds all those texts in your application. So you ask, why should you do something like that? We do it because of one, translation. It becomes easy to translate because over here, all your tests for the so over here, all your tests for the application are available here. So you can copy it and give it to ChatGPT and it will do the translation for you. So uh, when you come to your item.to-do here, you can see that there is some yellow warnings here. It is warning you that you should convert this text to a string resource, like you should convert it to this format because it is easy to make a translation. So if you build an English app and you want to translate it into like ewe or tree, then you have to save those files, all those strings inside this class, like the way they declare this one here. Once you do this declaration, you can easily make a translation. You can copy them from here, put in ChatGPT or Google Translator, and get the translated version for it. And there's a way you can also implement the translation in your application. When you come to the value folder and you right click on it, you come to new, you select the second option, which is values resource file. Once you click on that one, you see you can specify the name. So here you specify the same name as the one we have here. So here you declare the same name, string.xml, and then over here, these available qualifiers, you select locale. And when you select locale, you hit on this arrow to bring it here. So from this option, you see you have different kind of languages you can select to do translation for. You have like Croatia, Hindi, Hausa, Galicians, Irish, French, etc. So I'll just choose one randomly. I think Ewe. So you can select Ewe. So I think the Ewe we have to type Ghana Ewe and then Togo Ewe. So I'll select Ewe and then I'll click OK. So with this, you can see that there's another string file added to this and it has this extension. So we have the main one and then the translated one will be shown here. So Ewe, so EE mean the region Ghana. So it has this extension. So whatever translation you want to have for the string here, you copy it the same thing. So make sure you copy the same thing, because this name here are like keys and these are the values. So it's key value pair. So make sure it comes with the same thing. Then here you paste here. So this is the application name. Usually the application name you don't translate it. So for the created as, then you provide the error translation. I'll say XX. So for now, I don't know. Like I don't want to stress over it. So I'll say XX. So you provide the same translation. So whenever you run the app and the person changes the language to Ewe, then created art will be translated as XS over there. So that's how we do the translation, and that's how important these strings, putting the string here, like putting your strings or text inside your code into this string value. This is how important it is. Okay, so let's go back. So now we've done the same for um we are done with the created art. So I'll just do the other parts for pending and then status pending, and then I think this one I'll just import it. Okay, it's available, so I just have to import it. So I'll do the same for these guys and I'll be back. Yeah, I'm getting error because I've not made a translation for this guy. So this error is not like a code error. It's just a warning like you don't have translation for this text over here in error. So now our error is gone. I think okay. So we are done for this guy. We are done for this guy, the test. Okay, so this one is setting the status based on the status from the data, whether so this is actually a boolean, so whether it is completed or pending. So I use if statement to check this status, the status for this, and then if it's pending, I use the string pending, otherwise completed. And you see that in the design the colors are different. So to implement this color variation, because when it's completed it becomes green, if it's pending it is red. To implement that, I declare the color value that I used, so I have to create these color values as well. So I'll just come to my value folder and then declare a color. Sorry, I'll declare a color and I'll name it, and I'll give you some value like 444, and then I'll use this switch to pick the color. So I'm just picking a random color. Then I'll duplicate this and then change it to pending color. That's in pending, and I'll choose red. Okay, so now our error will be gone. Okay, so you can see the color swatch over here. So this will change the color of the text based on the status, and then change the message for the status based on the status from the data. And then we are good to go. So this will be creating the views. You see that it is a list. So it will be creating each item in the list. So this function here is responsible for creating each item in the list using this class, the inner class that we created. It will use the inner class, okay, to create the list. And then this guy, sorry, not the list, this guy will be creating and then connecting the data. Sorry. So this guy will be responsible for creating the items, connecting the data, and all that. And this one will be binding. So this is the actual function that is responsible for connecting the data to the view. And this one will be doing the as in creating the instance of this class. It will create this class, create an instance of it, and then make it available to this method to bind it to the data. And this is for some, it's a helper method. So this is a helper object responsible for some optimization and efficiency in our class. So like I said, this is actually like one way style class. So you can copy this class and paste it somewhere and keep it. Anytime you need to show a list in your code or in your application, you just copy and paste it there. This one is dealing about to do. You might be students, you might be employees or something. You just change, or list of books or something, list of images. You only come here and then change from to do to maybe list of photos. So you change it to photo. Then you are good to go. Okay. So you can go through. If you have any question, you can ask. So once we have this data available, so now that we have the adapter available, let's go and rename this and then connect the view to the data. Okay, so I want to rename this to reflect what it's actually doing. So to rename, you right click on the main activity class and then look for refactor. Under refactor, there's an option to rename. So I'll call it list activity or list activity. So we are done. Call it list activity. And then we have to rename the XML as well. So you come here and then look for refactor and then click rename and then call it list. Okay. So now we are done with the renaming. Okay. So now let's connect the view to the data. So to connect the view to the data, you come to the list activity. It is no longer main activity, it's called list activity. So inside the list activity, this is where you connect your XML to the Kotlin. So that Kotlin will pump or inflate. They are like balloons. These views are like flat balloons without air. And then the Kotlin will blow air into them so that they become visible on our screen like this. So to do that, we call a function called onCreate. And inside this function, you can see another function called setContentView. So we pass the XML, which is the list. So this is a layout resource. So to access the resource from the code or inside the Kotlin, we use the R for resource. You know, in the XML, we use but but in the code we use um, R for resource and then dot the name of the resource folder. So it could be layout, it could be drawable or something else, and then dot the name of the resource. So in this case, we are calling the activity list layout file. So now we are connecting this layout to this activity. You realize we connect this item to the to-do adapter. Now we want to connect the XML for the activity list to the list activity. So now you can remove this extra code here. But now we don't need it. But what it does is that it gives you that immersive feel for your application, like your application extend to the very edges of the phone screen. Okay, so you can remove it and remove this line here. On this line 13, you can remove this one. So we have just this, and this is responsible for connecting the XML to the Kotlin. But we are not going to use this approach. We'll use the view binding approach. So to use that, I'll create a private variable called binding, and then I'll use the activity list binding. Okay, so this is the XML generated. You can see it matches this with the binding at the end. And then when we come here, we'll have to initialize binding to activity binding dot inflate, and then you pass layout inflator. And then inside of this, instead of returning or passing this, we'll pass binding dot root. Then we are done. So you ask that before we have just one line to inflate the XML. Now we introduced 3 lines. Like I said, anytime you use the view binding, it converts everything into classes and properties for you. This makes accessing the items or the view inside the XML easier. Okay, that's why we introduced this. So from this binding, we have to connect to this list view so that we can connect the data to it and then show it. To do that, we'll connect to it by saying binding dot to do items. And if you see the side here, it shows recycler view. So to do items, and then we'll set adapter. So this guy needs an adapter. So we have to create the adapter, this instance of this adapter. Okay, so I'll come here. Let me close some of the things. Okay, so I'll come here and then create adapter. It's also private late init call adapter. No, let me call it to do adapter. Great. So I'll create an instance of to do adapter, and then I have to initialize it. To do adapter is equal to do adapter. Then we do like this. That's how we initialize it. Okay, and then here I have to set the adapter for it. So the adapter is equal to the to do adapter. So right now we are good to go, but we don't have data. You ask, we just create the template for the data, but this is not actually data. This doesn't show any sign of title or comments or anything. So we need data. So for now, will later create a form where user will enter his or her own data. Okay, but for now, I'll create a dummy data that we can use for testing to be sure that our list is working. So to do that, I'll go to ChatGPT for it to generate those simple data for me. And then I'll paste it here quick. Okay, so I had a chat with ChatGPT and it gave me this sample data. Okay, so this is just a list, a mutable list. We talk about this. You can check on my YouTube channel on more on lists. So this is a mutable list, and we are creating a list of to-do item. So we are creating a list of this. So like I said, to properties here will come by default, which is the created and then the ID. The rest the user have to pass. So this is what we provided. So we have three instances of the to do item class. So this adapter also need the data. So I'll come to do adapter. No, to do adapter, and then call a property called submit list. So inside the submit list, I'll pass the list that we created over here, to do list. And then after, so here I create an instance of it, initialize it, and then I pass the data to it. So once the data is ready, then I'll connect the adapter to the recycler view. I'll connect it to the recycler view. Okay, so now we can run our application. I think we are actually done. Item, seed data, that's what I got from ChatGPT, view binding, adapter, renaming, and then connecting. So we are done. Let's test it and see how it works. So to run your application, you click on the run button at the top here, the play button at the top. So now it is running. Yeah, it is running. So the emulator will be started soon. So the emulator sometimes takes quite some time to turn on. So we have to wait for a while. If you're having issue with your emulator or how to turn on the emulator, let me know in the comment section or in our community group. So now our app has run successfully, but we are not seeing the data. Let me see what's happening. Okay, so I think it's left with one property to specify for this. You realize list can be in different direction. We have horizontal list, and then list that can be from like left to right, and then we have lists made of columns. So this is like single column list. You can have a list that's made up of two columns, like one here, the other here, one here, the other here, one here, the other here. So it is just the same view that we use to create all those stuff. To specify that property, it is called layout manager. Okay, so that layout manager has mainly three types. So by default, it has this linear layout manager. So this is what we are saying. This is the linear one. And then we have the grid. Grid. So grid, you use this one to specify the grid as in 2 column, 3 column. So if you use the grid layout, you have to specify another property called span count. Span count. And then this one determines whether you want 2 column grid. So actually, as I've entered 2, now the titles and the things, the list is now 2 by 2 list, or you can go 3 by 3. You see, so we have 3 by 3 list. Okay, so let me bring it to 2. And then finally, we have staggered grid. So for the staggered grid, it is no uniform. The staggered grid layout manager, it is not uniform. Some of the items can be longer than others. Okay, so these are the 3 types of layout managers that you have available. For the first one, which is the linear layout manager, you don't have to specify the span count. But once you choose either to go with a grid or the staggered, you have to specify the span count. So let's go back to the linear. Okay, So once we have the linear layout manager, which is looking like this, what we have, when we run the application again, then we'll see our data. So it's still building. It takes a lot of time. That's why if your device is not powerful, you have a tough time running this Android Studio and the emulator. So to reduce the pressure, make sure you use your physical device. So it's done running. So let's go and check it out. Okay. So you can see the list that we created is now shown over here. So congratulations, you are now an a native Android developer. You can go ahead and update your LinkedIn. I mean, tell your friends, tell people around you that you can now build an application for them for the targeting the Android platform. This is just the basics. We have a lot we can learn from this. We've learned a lot, but there are still more to be learned. If you have any questions, any misunderstanding, just chat me in our WhatsApp community group, and also share your comment, review this video in on YouTube. Make sure you share, subscribe to my channel as well. Yeah, subscribe to my channel and talk about what you are learning on social media, because people have to know in order to patronize you. So try to share what you are learning on social media. Tag me, tag my YouTube channel so that people will come and learn more. This course is absolutely free. So the only favor you can do in return for me is to share the word. Thank you.